and start with the outlining of your book. So I use a couple of different resources when I outline. My favorite is a book called Take Off Your Pants by Libbie Hawker. And I first read the book because I dug the title. It was really funny and interesting and eye-catching, so I read it. And it's actually, you can use this system if you're a pantser, the right by the seat of your pants, or a plotter. And I used to be a pantser and am now a plotter, but you can, like I said, use this either way. So Take Off Your Pants by Libbie Hawker is what we're mostly going to be talking about today. Just a couple other resources before we get started though. Larry Brooks wrote a book called Story Engineering, and instead of a 3-act structure, he uses a 4-act structure, which actually makes a whole lot of sense. And also Rachel Herron wrote a book called Fast Draft Your Memoir, which you can use for your novel plotting as well. The system works either way. I really, really like her way of synthesizing Larry Brooks's 4-act structure into, bite-sized pieces, I guess you'd say. So Larry Brooks, Story Engineering, Rachel Herron's Fast Draft Your Memoir, and Libbie Hawker, Take Off Your Pants. So let's dive into Libbie Hawker's Take Off Your Pants. And the reason I really like her book is because it's the outlining that she does is very character driven. And I like to write stories that are character driven. And while her methodology is still very much the 3 or 4-act structure, hero's journey, character changes from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, the way she has you look at it, though, I don't know, it just really clicked for me. So let's get started. You're going to number your paper from 1 to 5 and then leave lots of space underneath it. So the 5 parts of story are: the character wants something, but something prevents her from getting it. So she struggles against that force and either succeeds or fails. Those are the 5 parts of story. And so in this first, on your paper then, on the number 1, this is the story core that we're working on. So line 1 is going to be your character, and you came up with that last week. So write in your character. And then from this point on, we're going to be working on a 3-legged outline. And in this 3-legged outline, and think of it as like a little stool, a 3-legged stool. So in this 3-legged outline stool, you're going to have character arc. That's one major component of your story. And then theme and pacing. So those make up your outline. Nowhere in there is there plot yet. So keep that in mind. So the first thing you're going to do, you've got character written down, your character's name and line 1. Now you're going to give that character a flaw, a big, fat, juicy, serious flaw. And Libbie Hawker says that starting out with a flawed character at the very beginning of the book is what's going to irrevocably hook your reader and make the story irresistible, the character irresistible, and then the reader will have to read on to see how she changes. So this flaw has to be, like I said, big, scary, juicy flaw. It can't just be something like an annoying habit that she has or something. It's got to be something that's potentially life-wrecking, because they're going to have that flaw at the beginning of the story, and then by the end it's going to be changed. And having that flaw, the flaw is what is going to dictate the story. The inciting incident has to relate to the flaw. The ending of the book relates to the flaw because that's how the character changes by the end. So the character flaw is really important. And yeah, I guess I'll just leave that at that. I could go on for a while, but I want this video to be short. So line 1 of the story core is your character. Underneath number 5, write down what your flaw is for that character. Okay, and then number 5 of that story core, remember, is how the story ends. So is this going to be a soft lesson or a hard lesson? The soft lesson is you're happily ever after. The character gets what they want at the end of the story, and they're a better person, because of it, or because of going on that story arc journey. A hard lesson is, they're a better person, but they didn't get what they wanted at the beginning of the book. And then the ambiguous ending is, it could be a good or bad ending, or a little bit of both, or, depending on how you look at it. So write down on the slot number 5 what your ending is, whether they succeed or fail. Okay, so number 2 is going to be your external goal, the character's external goal. So that's the thing the character wants. It has to be related to that internal flaw, like we said before, because that's going to provide the character opportunity eventually by the end of the story to recognize their flaw. So that's number 2. So number 1 is the main character. Number 2 is what the character wants, that external goal. And then you've got the flaw written down underneath number 5. Okay, number 2 of the story core is the antagonist. Line 3. So number 1, main character. Number 2, external goal. Number 3, antagonist. And Libbie Hawker's book is great about identifying the antagonist. A couple of points that are really interesting, I think, is they're kind of the inverse of the main character. And what I mean by that, I'll read a little quote from her. She says, "The antagonist is the person who is most heavily invested in achieving the same external goal. Because she is her own person, a different reality motivates her, and she will use different tactics than your main character uses, but she wants to achieve the same external goal just as badly." So they're kind of almost a mirror image of the main character. They want the same things. They're just going about it in a different way. So that's line 3 of the story core. And line 4 is going to be the ally. And one thing I want to say about the antagonist is that when you get to the antagonist part, you can either, when you introduce the antagonist in a story, you can either have that be a brand new character, or, this is really cool, it can be a character that was already in the story that wasn't an antagonist before and is revealed as the antagonist. And I think that's a really neat trick. I had the thought of doing that. And in the novel I'm working on right now, that's what I have happen. So that's a real fun trick. Okay, so the ally is the one who has the power to give the main character that snap out of it moment. So at some point in the story, the character is still heavily flawed, doesn't understand that they're the cause of their own, woes and problems, and they're the reason, the flaw is the reason why they're not getting what they want. So the ally is the person who holds up that mirror and, tells them to snap out of it. So it doesn't have to be a best friend or a family member, which they generally are, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be the person in the story that shows them that mirror that says, look, you have to face this. Okay, so now you've got everything but number 4 filled in. So you've got 1 is the main character, 2 is the external goal, 3 is the antagonist, 5 is the ending, and then underneath there you've got the flaw written, the ally, and now theme. So I don't want theme to scare you, but here are a couple of questions you can ask yourself to help you identify what your theme is. So basically, the theme is that takeaway message. So what is the takeaway message of your book? What's the point of the book is another way of looking at it. One question I like to ask myself is, why am I telling this story? What is so important to me, the author, about the telling of this story? And often your theme is hidden in there. So one thing you can note is you might not know what the theme of your story is now, but if you don't know what it is by the end of the rough draft, then there might be some tweaking that you'll have to do. Okay, so number 4 is the plot. So you've got your opening scene, your inciting incident, character realizes external goal, the display of the flaw, the drive for the goal, the antagonist revealed, thwart number 1, revisiting the flaw, the new drive for the goal, the antagonist attacks, thwart number 2, a changed goal. The protagonist decides, oh, this is too hard. I'm just going to give up. I'm going to go over here and do this other thing instead. The ally attacks. So that's when the ally holds up that mirror and says, wait a minute, you are your problem. The girding of the loins, where the character is ready to go on out and do the thing. The battle scene, which doesn't actually have to be a battle, depending on your story. The death, and the death is, again, it doesn't have to be a real death and often isn't, but really what the death is, it's the death of your character's flaw, which is just a great way to look at it. And then there is the outcome of that. So in that opening scene, you're going to put the when and the where, the setting part we talked about, and showing the reader the flaw right in the opening scene is great if you can manage it. And even if you can like hint about the theme too, that's just really great. It sets a strong subconscious hook. So I'm sure y'all know what inciting incidents are. That's what boosts the character into this new world. They're boosted out of their ordinary life. Something's not quite right. Maybe they see their external goal for the first time. Maybe they don't. Sometimes the inciting incident is the opening scene. But at some point, really close there, the character realizes his or her external goal. And that's where the character first decides to go after that external goal. The next scene, or sometimes these scenes bleed over into each other. So the display of the flaw, again, could happen in the opening scene. But at this point of the story, at the very beginning here, it really needs to be known to the reader what that flaw is. Because that's what's going to create the tension for the reader. And we want to set that soon. Okay, the drive for the goal, that's that first attempt to reach the goal. But of course, the character is going to fail because of their flaw. And then the antagonist revealed scene is again for drama and tension, obviously. And again, it can be a person that's new to the story, or it can be someone that is revealed as the antagonist that wasn't one before. Okay, let's see. Thwart number 1 is sometimes the same scene as the antagonist is revealed, like the character's going after something and wham, this obstacle's in the way and it's this character, and that's the thwart. That's they didn't get what they wanted. And sometimes, this was cool too in Libbie Hawker's book, sometimes that first thwart doesn't look like anything but fate. You know, the character doesn't realize that the reason he or she is not getting what they want is because of their flaw. But it just looks like fate or something. But usually is related to the theme, actually. So the revisiting the flaw scene is the character hasn't confronted their flaw yet, but maybe there's some self-doubt that's created in the character's mind. It's just a reminder, again, Libbie Hawker says, if it's clear to the reader that his failure to confront his flaw directly is the real source of his troubles. So yeah, whether the character knows it or not, the reader needs to know it at this stage. The next scene, new drive for the goal. That's like, okay, it didn't work, so here's my new plan. It's going to work. But it's still out of reach, of course, due to the character's flaw. The Antagonist Attacks. This is some opportunity for character self-reflection. It's the first plot point, or a plot point, let's say. And then another quote from the book, the events of this plot point make it clear to the character at this point that fate isn't behind his troubles and failures. And usually at this point in the story, the prize, the thing that they're going for has gotten more desirable because, again, like the antagonist is wanting it too. And now it's like, okay, the race is on. I've got to get this thing before the antagonist does. So thwart number 2 is clearly by the antagonist, where the first thwart was like, I don't know, maybe fate, whatever, but this is clearly the antagonist. And this is, again, where the character finally realizes that the flaw, his own flaw, is the source of all his troubles. And you can do this thwart, you can do this drive for goal, antagonist attacks, thwart sequence as many times as your story needs. You can do it twice, you can do it 30 times, whatever. But the key to not making it feel repetitive to the reader is making the main character, his self-awareness increase exponentially every time that one of those sequences happens. Okay, and at this part of the story, the character is just gonna like feel like throwing in the towel, like I'm just gonna give up on this external goal that seems way too out of my reach now. And so he comes up with this other plan that is related, but it has to be logical in respects to the story core. But it's not really related to his original goal. It's just too far off. And that's when the ally attacks and is like, hold on. Don't give up because this is really your problem. You can still get this other thing if only you would just be blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's that snap out of it moment, that mirror moment. Okay. The next thing I need to tell you about the ally attacks is just that it has to happen before the final battle. Okay, so the girding up the loins scene, that's okay, no more screwing around. I'm going to do it. I'm going to gird my loins and go into this with my eyes wide open. I'm in it to win it. I have no illusions about my flaw now. I'm going for it. And also this is where the reader needs to know that the character has awakened. And then the battle scene, again, it doesn't have to be a real battle, but this is where he's squaring off with the antagonist. The death, as I said before, is actually the death of the flaw. And also the character, this scene, this death of the flaw scene, usually has some sort of sacrifice that happens, this great sacrifice that the character is making. And then the outcome is number 5 on your story core. This is the ending. So Is it a hard lesson ending, a soft lesson, or an ambiguous one? And regardless of the ending, for the reader's benefit, you really need to make it clear if the character won or not. And then, spend some time on the implications of your character's flaw and the resolution of that. And then maybe one last visit on the theme of your book in those final sentences really offers closure for the reader. I didn't talk about pacing, which is the other part of that three-legged stool, but this video is already over 20 minutes and I wanted to keep them all short. So that was a very, as fast as I could make it, succinct way of doing plotting for your novel. The reason why you can make this work as a pantser is you've just outlined who these people are, what their flaws are, what the theme is, and you can just get there any way you want to the ending of the book, but you just know what the ending of the book is now. So there you have it. Thanks so much for waiting through 20 minutes of outlining with me, and I'll be here next week for episode 3.